Since the ninth grade, I've surrounded myself with people and immersed myself in experiences that have reaffirmed my passion for education. From teaching English in South America to mentoring fifth graders in Oceanside, I felt confident that my calling was to work with children. As fate would have it, this very program forced me to question this dedication and doubt my ability as an educator. It did so in the form of one small kindergartner. Actually, I suppose it was 24 various-sized kindergartners. Nonetheless, my student teaching placement made me confront issues I had never anticipated, and I am better because of it. The challenges I faced showed me a lot about myself as a teacher, and I thank each and every single 5-year-old for their refreshing, albeit frustrating, tendencies. One habit that grossed me out more than anything was when my kindergartners would lick their hands. From the grime of the playground to the half-dried glue remnants of their macaroni art, the 5-year-olds just could not keep their explorative fingers and palms out of their mouth. And while I was repulsed by this initially, I realized later that what was really going on was engagement in a highly stimulating sensory experience. Social norms disregarded or unknown, each hand licker was savoring the nuances of taste in a world that presented them with so much to experience. As an educator, I will provide my students with multiple modalities to access information. From tasting the breakdown of a starch into its monosaccharides to seeing their UV beads change colors in the sunlight, students learn best when they are driven by their curiosity and explore with their senses. Great teachers present subject matter in a way that turns each school day, lesson, and activity into an experience that is savored and internalized by their students. To my chagrin, the collars of my students' uniforms were in a constant state of chewy slobber. Their fingers were filthy with the crust of boogers, and my repeated suggestions and eventual pleas were no match for their 5-year-old impulses. Over time, I came to understand the reason behind these social miscues. They were so fascinated by the concepts we take for granted that they ground away at the fibers of their shirts until they became worn and wet. They dug deep into the cavities of the information they were seeing and hearing and reaped green, slimy knowledge as reward for their toils. This persistence and dedication to learning is something that often gets lost in the everyday grind of teaching. Sometimes the burden of test scores, pink slips, and demanding parents takes us away from the pure and simple fact that every student deserves a high-quality education. To provide them with one is among the greatest, most sincere societal goods. For myself, I must pick my bureaucratic battles and chew away at the everyday frustrations so that I am always reminded of the significant role I play in my students' lives. I must have tied at least 500 shoelaces over the course of the 6 months I student taught in kindergarten. I walked them through the loop, swoop, pull technique, the bunny ears, and every other strategy I could think of, hoping to relieve my shoe tying duties. And yet each day, the requests never ceased. These instances humbled me and instilled great patience in my practice. My students, despite my best efforts to teach them, were not quite ready for the challenge of tying their shoes independently. Their fine motor skills were not yet refined enough for the task, and they sincerely needed my help. While I must always hold my students to high expectations, I must also remember that they are still in the formative stages of their cognitive, physical, social, and emotional development. Learning is a messy process. Students will loop and swoop their way to success in due time. My role as an educator will be to guide them meticulously, repeatedly, and with great humility through this process so that they become independent, resourceful, cooperative citizens of society. The endless tears I saw in kindergarten reminded me of the very raw emotions our students grapple with at all times. From high school hormones to issues of elementary bladder control, our students are still learning to process and control their range of feelings. These formative years can be very difficult, and each student brings with them a different set of experiences which educators must be respectful of. By genuinely connecting with our students, we can better share with them the successes and setbacks we all must endure in growing up. Teaching kindergarten was one of the greatest challenges I have overcome. Every day threatened to bring me to tears, and yet I persisted, chewing away at issues and picking out areas I needed to improve. I looped, swooped, and pulled my way throughout the school year, adjusting my teaching strategies along the way. Eventually, I learned to savor every learning activity I encountered and created, no matter how brief. As I move on to teaching 7th grade, it is unlikely I will encounter the same types of drool and gruel. Nonetheless, the lifelong lessons my kindergartners have bestowed upon me will not soon be forgotten. To them, I am unendingly grateful.